why we need the One Piece
Just
remake.
recently, we got our first look at the One Piece remake from Wit Studio. They didn't show much, but what they did show, both from the conceptual phase and just the staff that are attached to this project, not only got me really excited, but it got me thinking about what exactly they're trying to pull off here, and what I think they need in order to actually do it. With that being said, here's 10 things the One Piece remake should definitely have if it wants to please fans, if it wants to please me, and if it wants to become a worthy adaptation.
The first thing he's gonna say is pacing. I already know. The first thing he's gonna say is pacing.
Of Oda's masterpiece. The first thing they need is a fresh start with good pacing. This is not number one by chance. This is without a doubt what the One Piece remake will benefit from the most, and what I think justifies its entire existence. I keep seeing people say, what is the point of this remake? Why are they remaking something that hasn't even finished in its original adaptation? Why are we doing this?
I mean, it's
Well,
what, like,
I don't know.
how old is One Piece? That One Piece anime is 27? 27 years old? I would understand why they're doing a remake, honestly. I'm excited for it, I'm not gonna lie.
You've noticed, but One Piece is really goddamn long. That original adaptation started in 1999 and has been airing almost every single week for the past 25 years.
Yep.
That's a lot of episodes. That's a lot of content. There's tons of people out there who
early One
genuinely
Piece
want
is
to
fire,
get into
though.
this series, but don't have the time or the motivation to start climbing this enormous wall of over 1,000 episodes. These people are acting like we're redoing something modern here, but the content that this remake is actually adapting hasn't really been done in animation since the 90s. Having a remake that's starting fresh like this is basically the golden opportunity for so many people to finally dip their toes in and experience this wonderful story.
For sure, dude.
However, that's just one side of what the One Piece remake can offer in terms of actually climbing that wall. The other very important advantage that it has over that original Toei adaptation is pace control. You have to realize that Toei's anime for One Piece started only a few years after the manga had started itself.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
And because it's a weekly anime adapting a weekly manga, well, put two and two together, eventually the Toei anime had to be very conscious of not catching up to that source material.
Yeah.
What starts in the beginning adapting around two...
But since they don't have to wait for anything, they could, expand scenes, they could do whatever. They're not on, like, a time constraint like Toei is.
2 chapters per episode later became just 1 chapter per episode, and sometimes even less than that in the worst case situations, all in order to keep this long-running format and never catch up to where the manga is. Now, this entire situation is way more nuanced than just saying, more chapters per episode good, less chapters per episode bad. Don't even get me started on some of the absolutely delusional roadmaps I've seen of adapting all of One Piece in 250 episodes.
That's impossible.
That is not how any of this works, and you are a fool if you think that's actually a good idea. It's not even that they haven't already made lower chapter count adaptations.
Here's the thing,
into
though.
Something.
With the One Piece remake, are they gonna go all the way to to the end, or are they only gonna remake the original arcs? Have they said that? Have they said if they're gonna do the entire show, or are they just gonna go to a certain arc and then they're just gonna let Toei do the rest? Did they say that? I have no idea.
Good. Episode 1015, arguably the greatest
Best One Piece episode. 1015 is the best One Piece episode, hands down, and nobody will ever tell me otherwise.
Episode of One Piece, or any anime that I have ever seen, didn't even adapt a full chapter of the manga. What I'm actually getting at here is that the big advantage of this One Piece remake having all of this content available to them right at the start is that they have the freedom to pick and choose what the best way to adapt is. Maybe some episodes do adapt 3-4 chapters at once, while others that you want to zone in on more closely end up adapting less. You have to keep in mind that One Piece chapters, especially later on after the time skip,
there's a lot,
can be incredibly dense with story and dialogue, where it really doesn't make sense to try to cram and adapt as many chapters as you can. That just cannot work for One Piece. If the One Piece remake wants to become the best that it can possibly be, then these creators need to know that perfect line between rushing and dragging. They need to know when it's okay to blast through some stuff and when it's time to slow down and really give these scenes and
For sure.
moments the time that they deserve. And that leads me into the next thing that I really want to see from this One Piece remake. Number 2, filler, baby.
What?
Now, before you instantly
Oh,
click off
okay,
this
hold
video
on.
and tell me that I'm
Hold on.
stupid
Let him cook.
for
Hold up.
even daring to say that I want filler in this
I'm gonna
adaptation,
assume he means he wants extended scenes of like earlier shit, like a Zoro versus Mihawk, like extended fight. I think that's what he's
that is
kind of talking
specifically
about.
being made to be more faithful to the manga. I want to make it clear that I'm not talking about the kind of filler that you're probably imagining. I'm not looking for a 10-episode filler arc about trying to find this.
When I first watched One Piece, I didn't know this was filler. I watched the whole thing. I only found out till later because I was talking to one of my friends. I was like, "Hey, I'm on the like, dragon episode," and they're like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" I'm like, "The dragon they found in the cave," and he's like, "I don't know what the hell you're talking about." And I found out it was filler. I was so upset. I watched the whole thing.
Dragon's Home, or some random time travel story with Rainbow Mist. To be fair,
don't know
there
what the
was
hell
that
that was.
hella good G8 Marine base arc.
Oh,
but in
G8
general,
was G8 was cool.
I'm not really expecting or looking forward to full original arcs or episodes. I do think that anime in general has moved past that for a long time. The kind of filler that I'm talking about are the spaces in time between panels, pages, and chapters.
Yeah.
These times that are filled with original content to elevate the story that Oda has already told.
Yeah.
It's watching Zoro and Sanji washing dishes on the Going Merry as they travel to the next island. It's watching Luffy run into an old man in Alabasta and expanding on rain powder and the struggles of this
I
country.
forgot about that.
It's watching Robin's full story of being imprisoned before eventually finding her way into the Revolutionary Army.
Yeah.
Even within that aforementioned episode 1015, greatest episode in the series,
Yep.
one of the greatest episodes of anything. This
Yep.
episode has filler. That incredible Luffy dream sequence, that vision that Yamato has of Luffy and Roger's dreams overlapping, that is not in the manga. That is 100% Megumi Ishitani's cinema,
good.
baby. This is what I'm talking about. One of my favorite and most underrated scenes in the Toei adaptation is this scene in Alabasta between Zoro and Chopper, where Chopper is starting to feel unsure of the crew that he's ended up joining.
Yep.
He's unsure about how chaotic and mismanaged that they appear on the outside. And the talk that Zoro has with Chopper here, his views on the crew and his place in it, and the words of encouragement he ends up giving him are just so captivating and so accurate to Zoro's character that you could genuinely tell me that Oda wrote this scene himself and I would believe you. This is the kind of filler that I want to see
Yeah.
in the remake. I want an adaptation
I
that
agree
isn't just a
100%.
checklist, isn't just moving from page to page robotically. As much as people seem to want that, that just cannot work. These are different mediums and they require different approaches to adapting the same material. On some level, there do need to be creative liberties taken and additions that bridge the gaps between these panels and pages and chapters. If you don't want to take it from me, then take it from Oda himself, who has said this to the remake staff. Rather than just faithfully reproducing the manga of One Piece, the anime staff should digest it and remake it in their own style. Now, the writer for the One Piece remake has been confirmed as Taku Kishimoto, and as somebody who's watched
Okay.
a good few of the shows that he's written here, I'll say there's definitely a mix in quality, but at his best, you do have shows like Haikyuu or Fruits Basket, which, in my opinion, are
Peak.
some of the gold standards
Yeah.
as far as pacing and series structures are concerned.
For sure.
Obviously, it's still too early to really say anything about how this script will turn out, but fingers crossed that this writer has his own vision and we're not just looking at a checklist adaptation.
Hopefully
the third thing
not.
the One Piece remake definitely needs
Voice actors.
is recast voice actors. Now, I heard someone...
Here's the thing about that, right? I feel like that the voice actors are just too iconic to replace. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like just Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, like the crew especially, I feel like they're too iconic to replace. I feel like, I don't know, bro. I don't know. I feel like they really have to nail these new voice actors. If they don't, I don't know. I just don't think it's going to hit the same. You know what I mean? Luffy's just too iconic. I think all of their voice actors are just too iconic. Even with the recent Frankie voice actor change, I don't mind it, but it's not the same, right? It's not the same Frankie that we've known since Ennie's Lobby. You know, like I don't hate it. I think his voice fits, but it's just like it's not the same, you know?
You in the audience just gasp in horror when I said that, and I know that this is another one that will probably be very controversial, but put your feelings aside for one goddamn second and really think about this. We're talking about a remake adaptation that could very well last another 2+ decades. We're talking about a roster of voice actors that have been voicing these core and supporting characters already for the past 25 years.
Yeah.
We're talking about a main crew of Straw Hats here who are all in their 60s, some almost 70s right now. Even within the currently airing series,
I just talked about this.
Frankie's voice from when he was introduced to now. It is unbelievably sad, man. The legend just wants to retire. This needs to happen. We need a fresh cast of voice actors for this remake. Am I happy about it? No, absolutely not. I can't picture a single soul capturing Monkey D. Luffy the way that Mayumi Tanaka does. It's going to be weird hearing Zoro, Sanji, Nami, and Usopp with different voice actors. I get it. But it's just a fact of life that these people in real life can't play these characters forever. And I would rather start fresh with a new vision right from the beginning than have to constantly dread replacing them later on. Give them all some fun cameo roles within the series, and I think that would work just fine. In the vein of continuing audio then, the fourth thing that the One Piece remake absolutely 100% needs is good sound design. Now, I cannot stress enough that when I watch the One Piece anime in its current state, other than the pacing, which we've already discussed, the biggest thing holding back One Piece in the modern day...
They reuse too many sounds for the same thing. Like, especially in Egghead. I think they've toned it down more, but I remember early Egghead, their like footstep sounds, you know what I'm talking about? That like... That shit was annoying as hell. And when they portray Speed for almost every character, they use the same exact sound effect. Hockey, I guess, is different because it's really only one thing. But no, yeah, I think also the sounds are just outdated. But I think definitely they could use some different sounds. I don't know, though. I feel like I said with the voice actors thing, I feel like some of them are just so iconic. Like the hockey, like Conqueror's hockey sounds, like Shanks's and Luffy's. Like, I feel like you can't change those. I feel like you can definitely change some like impact sounds or some sounds when they're like going really fast. I feel like there definitely does need to be more sounds, but keep the old ones. Don't just do a complete, well, for the remake, obviously, I feel like they're gonna, you know, completely change them. But for the anime right now, I feel like there definitely needs to be new ones, but keep the old ones. You know what I mean? Don't just redo the entire sound thing. I feel like that would be kind of dumb.
It's absolutely abhorrent. Sound design.
I don't know about
I could make an entire video about everything wrong with Toei's sound design for One Piece. It is maybe some of the worst that I have heard in my history of watching anime.
It's just a lot of the same, like, repeat sounds. Like, they'll do that for a lot of fight scenes. They'll just reuse the same sound, like, over and, like, especially if there's, like, a Zoro fight. They'll just reuse that same sword clashing sound, like, over and over and over and over again. It's like, come on.
Now, back in the 2000s, it's a lot easier to look past the sound design for One Piece. Anime sound design in general just kind of sucked back then, and for that era of One Piece, it actually fit the tone and the limited animation that One Piece was working with. But as you get further into the series, especially when you look at Wano and when you look at Egghead, these arcs that on a production level have clearly moved into the modern age, modern production pipelines, better animation, and better visual design than even a lot of seasonals right now, the sound design is just not cutting it. These 2-decade-old sounds are not cutting it. These reused Dragon Ball effects are not cutting it. It is such a shame seeing such love and passion being poured into the visuals that One Piece is currently offering, while it feels like the audio and the sound design has only gotten worse and lazier compared to those beginning episodes that aired in 1999.
Yeah.
And it's not even a Toei-specific issue. Look at their other series and you'll find audio that is relatively competent. Modern Precure has modern sound design. Girls Band Cry has modern sound design. I have no idea why One Piece of all things has been left in the dust here, but I am confident that when you are sitting down to watch Wit Studios' One Piece, it will justify its existence almost immediately because the sound design will actually be good.
Yeah.
You will be transported into this world in a way that
I definitely see what he means, though. I think it's just so repetitive sometimes. It's just way, way, way too repetitive. And it's just so outdated now. Like what he said, like the animation's up to modern standard now, but it's the exact same sound effects from 1999. It's like, come on, bro.
you've never
Or if there is a new sound effect, 90% of the time it's really not that good.
been before.
リアルな我々の状況だ。それを止めてくれ。
The fifth thing that I really want to see from One Piece Remake, rounding out the audio here, is a new composer and new music. Now, unlike
You can't replace the old One Piece music though. It's like I said with the voice actors, it's just too iconic. I think the music, I think One Piece's music has always slapped. I think honestly, if they kept the same music for the entire series, I would not complain. Bro, their music slaps. I think obviously for the remake they're gonna have to change it, but dude, I just think the original music just way too iconic. I don't know, bro. I love the One Piece music, bro. It just always hits.
sound design, which just universally needed a complete upgrade, I could see new music for One Piece actually being a double-edged sword, because one, this is one of the few core staff positions on the remake that we haven't actually filled yet. We do not know who is doing the music for this One Piece remake. But second is that I actually really like the soundtrack that One Piece already has.
Exactly.
I think when you watch hundreds or thousands of episodes of something, you kind of just intrinsically associate that sound and that music to the actual series. Overtaken, the very, very strongest, I'm Here With You Too, all of those tracks are One Piece to me. Kohei Tanaka's music is One Piece. All of that being said though, if One Piece Remake is going all in on creating its own experience and its own adaptation, I really don't think they should reuse any of Toei's music or even get Tanaka to do the OST again. I think
could see him doing it just in a more modern way. I could definitely see that, but I think there should be just completely new music.
we need a new take on this music, and I think there's a lot of potential with who they could end up getting. If I had to give some names right now that I think could achieve even greater heights with One Piece's soundtrack, it would either be Little Witch Academia's Michiru Oshima, or Hunter x Hunter 2011's Yoshihisa Hirano. The big thing that I'm looking for in a One Piece soundtrack, specifically this East Blue Saga, is just capturing the pure and romantic essence of adventure, capturing that journey, capturing the high seas. I do think of Oshima's work on Little Witch Academia, Tatami Galaxy, Sound of the Sky, Hirano's work on Hunter x Hunter, Death Note, Eden Zero. They're two of my favorite composers, and if you've heard their previous work, I think you'd agree that they would absolutely fit One Piece's story. And they both have a history of working on Netflix shows, so even more credibility there. The big advantage the One Piece remake soundtrack will have, though, regardless of who ends up doing it, is that theoretically, because of the seasonal arc by...
Here's one thing, actually, literally, this picture just reminded me of what I wanted to say. I hope the remake is, I don't want to say gorier, but I hope it's less... How do I explain this? I hope it's more violent. Not like that, but I hope like for example, White-bearded Marineford, how his like half his face gets punched off, but in the anime it's like only his mustache gets cut off. Like I hope they do that. Like I hope they show more what the manga wanted to show instead of like dumbing it down for a TV show. I think it's because of like ratings and shit, but we already have the original One Piece. Why not do it with this one? You know what I mean? Like he even looks bloodier than the original picture if I can find it. I really hope they do that, cuz honestly, sometimes or it's like it'll be a final attack, it'll cut through them, and they'll just have like blood running down their face when they should have like a gashing scar in their chest. Like, you know what I mean?
Arc schedule, we should be getting a lot more variety in One Piece's soundtrack than we ever had in the past. Again, I really like the current One Piece's soundtrack, but it's very obvious after 1,000 episodes when the director really doesn't have many music choices available,
That's true
and they
as
just
well.
have to reuse something that you've heard a million
That's true
times
as well.
before.
But it hits every
Imagine
time.
getting unique arrangements of songs based on the location they're in, Arabic-style music for Alabasta,
That'd be cool.
Spanish arrangements for Dressrosa,
Yeah.
unique sounds for Water 7 or Jaya. This is the real potential of a varied soundtrack, and I can't wait to see what they do with it. The real question at this point for me is if they try to include another rendition of We Are as the opening for this series. Toei is on the production committee. They probably want to honor the original adaptation. I could 100% see that happening,
sure.
but I hope it doesn't. I don't need a 5th rendition of We Are. Maybe get Kitadani again
hits,
for a
though,
new
I'm not
song,
gonna
but
lie.
considering we just got him for a new
I'll say
song
he
in the
just did
Toei
one,
anime,
yeah.
I think I'd rather them go in a new direction here as well. The number 6 thing One Piece Remake should have, at least according to me, is a fresh art direction and good character designs. Unlike
assume
everything
it was
else that
going
I've been
the
talking
way.
about so far, this is something that we've actually gotten a glimpse into with this extended first look into
Yeah.
the production of the One Piece remake. It's still quite a ways off, I have to imagine, so what we're left with here is more of a conceptual first look into the character designs and the concept art for this series. And this is where I have a lot of excitement, but also some concern about what this remake will actually end up looking like. On the surface, when you just look at the concept art that they're showing here, it looks absolutely perfect in my opinion.
Yeah.
This is everything that I would want a remake of East Blue to look like. The pastel watercolor aesthetic, the rounder and softer designs for the characters. What I love about this is the concept art feels like it's capturing the essence of what East Blue
What's up,
was when it released in the 90s. And while I also would have embraced and maybe even preferred a completely new direction for the series, maybe something like Sushio's designs for One Piece
those
Movie
are cool,
6,
but I disagree.
as far as what a faithful interpretation of East Blue should look like, I think this is about as good as it gets.
Yeah.
Where my concern comes from, though, is that when you look at the characters for the actual series, they look different compared
Yeah,
to
they
the
do.
image boards that I just showed you. In contrast to the concept art, these designs for the Straw Hats feel a lot more sharp and a lot more modern. They feel like they're trying to combine the aesthetics of what the characters look like in the current arc and Oda's modern style with what they looked like in East Blue.
Yeah.
It's actually very similar to the designs that
Yeah.
you would see in
Yeah,
those
I was just about
recap
to say
specials for East Blue. In those, you would see Masayuki Sato's very modern One Piece film designs
Yeah.
retrofit into very old arc material. And even back then, with those recap specials, I always felt
You know
like
what I wonder? I wonder if they're gonna keep the same animation style as original East Blue, or if they're gonna go to like Wano and Egghead animation style, where it's like crazy colors and like insane animation. Like, are they gonna bring Chansard onto the remake? And like for Zoro versus Mihawk or whatever, that's just one example. Is he gonna animate the whole thing and it's gonna go crazy with this fluid moment or fluid? Oh my god, fluid movement and animation, or are they just gonna keep it like good animation, same art style kind of thing? I wonder if they're gonna do that.
was such a strange decision to make aesthetically. The way that Oda drew those characters back in early One Piece is just so iconic and so emblematic of those arcs and the time that they took place in that I was hoping we wouldn't try to modernize them too much in this Wit Studio remake. The other thing that feels off about them, both compared to the concept art and
It's
just
too white,
looking at
bruh.
them in a vacuum, is their skin color. Now,
Thank you.
This has been a point of controversy and debate for I don't even know how long. This has been something that I've heard about for many, many years. These characters were introduced in the anime with certain skin colors, and gradually as time went on, the designs became lighter and lighter. Robin, Zoro, Usopp especially, people miss those more varied and interesting skin.
He was more darker, and now I don't want to say he's like white, but Luffy was darker in the beginning. Same with Zoro, same with Usopp, same with Robin. Everybody else, no, but I'm trying to think if there's any other characters who had that happen to. I think it's mostly just Robin and Usopp are the most talked about because it's the most obvious. Usopp literally went from that to like white
tones, and I can definitely
looked so much better with her darker skin, let's be honest.
Sympathize with that, but I'm also not really in the crowd that,
and I understand it was an animation error because they didn't know what skin color they were, but it's like, why not just keep it? They looked so much better with the darker skin tones.
Thinks that they're whitewashing the characters. I think what happened more realistically is that the anime just kinda did their own thing with the designs in the beginning of this.
And why not keep it though? They looked so much better.
Series, and now they're gradually paying the price for it and trying to get it closer to how Oda colors them in the manga. And that's also the defense that I've been seeing about these remake designs as well. Yeah, they're white, but they're white in a way that Oda intended, right? But the thing is, they are really goddamn white here. They almost look like corpses, they're so white. I was laughing so hard at some of the comparisons that I've been seeing to Usopp's skin color. It's honestly kind of absurd how light all of their skin colors have become. Yeah, Oda doesn't draw all of them with those darker skins that we saw in the Toei series.
Like, you can't tell me that he doesn't look so much better with this skin tone. Like, it's just like, it's insane.
He does color them. They are not this white in the manga. Look at the color spreads, look at the pages on Jump. Oda does paint these characters in a way where they do have a very warm and almost tanned appearance in a lot of his artwork, and that's clearly not what we're getting here.
No.
It's also, again, not what we're seeing in this concept art that they've shown. Now, granted, a lot of these do have very strong ambient lighting and coloring, but even looking past that, there is a lot more color in their skin than the actual design sheets would have you believe. So with all of that being said, I want to say that I could be absolutely crazy and the Wit Studio remake will still end up looking like that concept art. God, I hope so. Maybe those design sheets aren't finalized, or maybe they aren't telling the full picture
when did this
here.
Come out 11 months ago? Bro, it is September 25th. Where the fuck is the remake? We have gotten no news on the remake.
In complete fairness to them, we do have two very talented character designers and animation directors here, one of which is actually the character designer who worked on Attack on Titan and Psycho-Pass.
Oh, hell yeah.
So, I don't exactly think they're going to mess this up. It's just that my biggest hope with this adaptation, with its designs and with its art direction, is that it doesn't try to feel too modern. When watching this, I want to be
But, like, how do they not do that, though? You know what I mean? Because the whole reason they're, like, remaking it is so newer people, or not newer people, like, new anime fans who are scared of the longevity of it, want, like, a modern version of the original. So, like, how do you not make it modern, but, like, old at the same time? Like, keep the rounder art style and not make it as sharp?
Transported back to that nostalgic era of East Blue. I want the series to have that softer, Oda-like watercolor painting vibe. I want the characters to look different compared to what they look like in the current Toei adaptation. You already know from day one that people are going to be comparing this series to everything else One Piece that has come out since its inception. So I think having art and designs that feel fresh and feel interesting is how you justify this remake's existence to a lot of these people who only care about visuals. Which leads me into the next thing that One Piece Remake should and probably will have.
Animation?
Number 7, a strong production. And no, I'm not strictly talking about animation here.
Oh, okay.
I don't think it's a secret to say that Toei's One Piece has kind of been on fire for the past couple of years.
And they're still going.
I've been following the production since Whole Cake Island, and when Wano started, I was kind of baffled.
Yeah.
I didn't think I would ever see TV One Piece ever looking as good as the beginning of Wano
when you first
did.
get to Wano, that shit is insane how different it is. Like, especially coming off of Whole Cake. I'm not saying Whole Cake, like, the production was bad, but it was still very, like, stiff One Piece-y when it never, like... I don't know. I mean, One Piece always had, like, decent animation, but I think it really, really jumped up when... in the Katakuri fight, like 100%. And then you get to Wano and it's a completely different direction change for the good.
But then, I think some staff over there read my thoughts or read my mind, took it as a personal challenge, and only continued escalating the quality higher and higher into Onigashima and now into Egghead Island. Hell, the episodes in Egghead that have been coming out recently are some of the strongest that have ever come out in the entire series. I don't think it's a stretch anymore to say that Toei's One Piece has become one of the most exciting anime to follow if you're a fan of animation.
Oh, for sure.
And the reason I'm saying all of this is to set some realistic expectations for what Wit Studios' One Piece is actually going to end up looking like.
Yeah.
It's going to look great, don't get me wrong, but in terms of raw animation talent, I really would not go into this Wit adaptation expecting anything on par with the absolute peaks that Wano and Egghead have reached.
Good animation though. I feel like if they kind of make it just like a basic just fighting animation, it's gonna get kind of boring, no? I mean, I'm not saying like it needs to be this fucking insanely flashy, fluid animation for like the entire episode, but like make it good. You're comparing yourself to current One Piece, the best animation in the game. You got a lot to, you know, and I'm not saying it has to best what it's doing right now, but I'm just saying like you gotta have some crazy shit in there.
One, Toei's production on One Piece right now is just kind of absurd and pretty much unattainable for most other studios that are working right now. But two, it's also important to remember that Wit Studio itself is working on multiple different projects as well.
So is Toei though. Aren't they working on that one music anime? And then they work on Dragon Ball here and there. And then wait, didn't Wit do Attack on Titan though? Didn't Wit do the first 3 seasons of Attack on Titan? And that animation was really good. Like especially when like Levi going down all those roofs when Kenny was following him, that went crazy.
Hell,
I could see them doing, you know, I got faith in them. I don't think it's going to be like as crazy as current One Piece animation, but I still think it'll be really good.
They're rumored to be working on another 90s anime remake right now, which apparently has one of the greatest lineups of staff that the industry has ever seen. Basically, I wouldn't go in expecting the One Piece remake to be some kind of animation power super project. I don't think that's what you're going to get from this, at least not in this first East Blue arc. That being said, before you doom about it too much, I would still go in expecting it to be very strong, very polished, and most importantly, consistent. And this is where I think Wit's One Piece does have
because One Piece does have very inconsistent animation sometimes. Especially in Egghead, but you'll have Egghead episodes where they literally do nothing. Or it's just a bunch of fucking PNGs moving. And then you'll have Egghead episodes, like the newest one, like the Gorosei episode in Luffy vs. Zoro, that went fucking insane for the entire runtime of 25 minutes. I think it'll be very consistent. I don't really think there's going to be some episodes where it's like kind of mid, and there's some episodes that are 10 out of 10s. I think it's throughout the whole thing going to be consistent.
Distinct advantages over what the Toei anime is doing right now. The first is that this remake is going to be seasonal. Unlike Toei, who has to keep making new episodes every single week, Wit Studio's taking the seasonal approach, and they seem to be going at it from a saga by saga basis instead. Now, how well that can work out later on when you have sagas that last up to 15 volumes, I don't know. They'll probably have to split them up even more. But the important thing is that they don't have to make new episodes every single week. They're taking this on a season-by-season basis, which naturally means more consistent quality.
Dude, imagine if
these episodes probably...
if current One Piece was on seasonal, dude, the animation would be even crazier. Pacing would also be insanely better. like insanely better.
They won't have peaks as high as when Toei really locks in, but there's
Yeah,
also
right.
probably not going to be any of the lows that you see in Toei's One Piece either. The foundation for quality
Yup.
is most likely going to be much higher.
Yeah.
The second thing the remake really has going for it is we're adapting East Blue,
Yeah,
man. I
East
say
Blue's
all of this
really
about
good.
not expecting crazy Sakuga
Yeah.
animation, but really, there's not much in East Blue that even necessitates that kind of animation to begin with. Zoro versus Mihawk,
I was
Luffy
just about
versus
to say
Kuro, the Arlong Park sequences, these are the fights that I can imagine and warrant having great and flashy animation.
Yeah,
And
for
sure,
sure.
they can pop off wherever they want. Maybe some animator will have a crazy Sakuga sequence for when they're running away from the villagers after the buggy fight. You know those animators like popping off in random sequences
Yeah.
like that. But basically what I'm saying is East Blue is tame enough that anything more than that honestly just feels like a bonus. I think what East Blue will benefit from much more, and what I'm personally more interested in, is the direction and the storyboarding.
For sure.
This is what's actually going to bring these episodes to life, and thankfully we have a really good director at the helm with Attack on Titan's Masashi Koizuka. Now,
That's
granted,
huge.
on Attack on Titan, this guy was working under the chief direction of the legendary Tetsuro Araki, which means we haven't entirely seen what he can do on something that's 100% his vision. But you'd have to be delusional to think that this guy isn't incredibly talented in his
Yeah.
own right, and based on his Attack on Titan work, I have a lot of hope for the direction of this One Piece remake. I think we're in completely safe hands
Attack
here.
on Titan
More
is
than
so
any
good.
kind of raw animation talent on this series, I really do think it'll be seeing East Blue with these modern directorial touches, modern production pipelines, and even much more elaborate background art. That's the stuff that will really leave a strong visual impression on the audience. Just
Yeah.
imagine seeing the art direction and background work from something like Film Z, but within the Log
Film Z
Town
was
arc.
crazy.
That's the kind of production that I'm expecting
Besides
to
the
see
Sanji
from
scene,
this
that
series,
shit was weird.
and I cannot wait. The eighth thing that the One Piece really needs, in my opinion, are the little details. I'm talking about the things that don't necessarily make or break the project on their own, but
They just add
quickly
more-
add up over
Yeah,
time
yeah.
in a way that really makes the project feel special
Yep.
and feel like the creators care. One thing I saw a lot of people getting excited about
that?
is the fact that unlike Toei's adaptation of One Piece, Wit's version will not have any censorship at all.
That's what I was
All the
trying to say,
blood
censorship. That's what I was trying to say earlier. The censorship, dude. I'm excited for that because I don't know, bro. The One Piece censorship goes a little too crazy sometimes. Like with the whole Zeph thing, with Whitebeard, with what else? Even like, okay, well, this was before the next One Piece episode comes out after when Zoro defeated Lucci. But even in the preview, it doesn't look like Lucci has that much blood on him. And in the manga, the panel is fucking crazy.
and darker material from the manga will actually stay intact this time around because we're not airing this in
Yeah.
a Sunday morning primetime slot on Japanese television.
Yeah.
That's really exciting, but one thing that I haven't seen people talk about that I'm really interested in are how Wit are going to end up adapting all of
Oh,
these
the
cover
cover
stories
stories.
that Toei has skipped over the years. There's a lot of cool and
Yeah.
important stuff there that literally just hasn't ever been adapted.
Yeah.
And I think it'd be a great opportunity for Wit to animate that stuff that's never really been animated before.
is he putting a
And while I'm
sandwich
talking about cover pages, I really wanted to talk about this. One cool,
The Enel one would go crazy because a lot of people don't. Well, anime onlys. I feel like kind of really like Enel and don't know what he did after Skypiea. That would be sick, actually.
stupid idea that I've always had for a One Piece remake, stretching back years, is somehow being able to capitalize on all of Oda's color spreads and fun little pages where characters are
I mean,
interacting.
sometimes in the current One Piece anime, I think they've done a cover story like very rarely. Wasn't the Bartolomeo thing burning Shanks' flag down a cover story? If I remember correctly, I think when Bartolomeo burned Shanks' flag down, I think that was a cover story that they animated. I'm pretty sure I could be wrong.
With animals. It just feels like such a shame seeing all of these cute little drawings and never really trying to do anything with that in the actual anime. It's such a core identity of how I see One Piece. So my idea is basically every single episode has Gurren Lagann style eye catches where people on the staff or even guest illustrators and animators can come in and draw or animate or visualize those pages as the midway breakpoints between episodes. Just think about how cool it would be to see all of those drawings realized in the anime on an episode by episode basis. It would be awesome.
That'd be sick.
But maybe that's dreaming a little too big. Maybe nobody even cares about something like that. But it does feel like a cool way to incorporate those fun spreads and pages that Oda releases on a regular basis. Hell,
That would be sick.
Toei incorporates some of them themselves in some of the One Piece openings. So
Yeah.
you know what? I'm gonna keep dreaming, man. However, another small detail that I'm personally excited about, and one that I'm sure is going to happen, is that we're probably going to finally get good episode titles for One Piece.
Yeah.
Now, maybe this is another thing that only
Yeah.
I care about, but if you watch any Toei anime, you
especially
know.
during Marineford, you know, that episode, you know, so-and-so dies on the battlefield. Like, bro, Toei, what are we doing, bro? Come on.
They have a very childish, caveman-like approach to how they title the episodes for all their anime,
Yeah.
which makes the episode titles honestly pretty lame and pretty boring.
Yeah.
Oda, on the other hand, I think is actually surprisingly underrated when it comes to his naming sense with chapters and even the slogans that he puts on his color spreads. He's just a really fun and creative writer, and I would love to see those chapter titles translated to actual episodes of One Piece.
For sure.
Have them come in at the end of episodes ReZero style, have them punctuate whatever scene or moment is happening. I think his titles are good enough to leave that big of an impression and feel surprisingly important. I'm just mentioning stuff that's come to my head, but the little details could honestly just mean any attention to detail that's being paid to make this series feel special, and I already get the sense that this team is doing that. I love the looks that we've gotten into the prop and world design for this series. We're seeing the details that go into the silverware and the furniture in Kaya's mansion. We're seeing the percentage of farmers, fishermen, and dairy farmers in Fuchsia Village. We're seeing full 3D recreations of this world just so directors, storyboarders, and animators have references for their work. You can tell there's so much love being poured into this, and I can't wait to see how it all comes to fruition. The ninth thing that One Piece Remake should absolutely do, or I will cry and be incredibly sad, is actually stick with it. I think I speak for most people when I say that a One Piece remake is only truly exciting if we can actually get to the later arcs. And
That's what I was saying earlier, is if I wonder if at a certain point they're just gonna stop and then they just let those viewers just go to the original One Piece anime. Like they go to like, they go all the way to like Marineford, for example, and then they stop right before time skip, or they go to like Whole Cake, for example, because then that's where really the animation and the production picks up, and then they stop there. I don't know.
sagas. Don't get me wrong.
But then it's also like, if they go all the way to like Wano or Egghead, it's like, why watch the remake when you can just watch the original anime and the animation is a million times better? You know what I mean?
East Blue is great. Great arcs, great introduction to One Piece. I really like East Blue. But it's not the stuff that I'm actually waiting to see in a One Piece remake.
No, for
On the
sure.
contrary, I actually think Toei's adaptation is at its best at the very beginning of the series. East Blue, Alabasta, Jaya, and Skypiea, I really
agree with that.
like these arcs in Toei's anime.
agree with
It's
that.
only the later you get into One Piece where the return on investment with a remake really starts to make a lot more sense.
Yeah.
Enies Lobby and beyond is where the pacing really starts becoming a problem. Post-time skip arcs are where the animation starts becoming a problem. All of this is in the midst of some of the greatest arcs One Piece has to offer on a storytelling level.
Yeah.
Seeing Fishman Island or Dressrosa with good pacing and good production, my god, that's my
That would be
dream.
fucking
But we
crazy.
can only get there if this adaptation continues to be successful and continues to be
I
supported.
don't think the adaptation will ever fail. I think honestly their biggest enemy is time. Like, that's going to take a long time to get there. Especially now, what, this video is 11 months old, and it's September 25th, and I don't think there's a peep of the remake. I don't know what the hell's going on, but I think their biggest enemy is just going to be time.
And that leads me into the 10th and final thing that I think One Piece Remake absolutely needs if it wants to have that long-term support. It needs to have a vision. I've already said this verbatim multiple times throughout this video. It's kind of an amalgamation of every other point that I've made. But I really do think if this remake wants to succeed, if it wants to keep people interested, and if it wants to distinguish itself among the decades of content that One Piece already has, this staff need to have a vision for this project. It can't just be a Netflix cash grab to make the live action more.
Okay, the live action is not that bad. The live action's not that bad. It's not that bad. Listen, it was only the first season. I think the second season will be much better, but it's not that bad.
More popular. It can't be a checklist of the manga with no creative liberties taken.
Yeah.
It can't be an aesthetic replication of what Toei has already done.
Yeah.
It needs its own flourishes. It needs its own moments. It needs its own aesthetic.
Yeah.
And it really does need its own vision.
Yeah, for sure.
Everything that I've seen tells me that it does have its own vision, but it's only something that will become more apparent as we get more footage and get more insight into the project. We're all in this together until that point, so let me know what differences or changes you're anticipating the most with this new telling of One Piece. What are you excited about? What are you worried about? What small details are you hoping that they pay attention to? Tell me everything and join the Discord server in the description below if you want to talk about it with me and a bunch of other One Piece fans even further. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed.
I agree with damn near almost everything he said. I think the biggest issues the remake is gonna have is just, I think the original's just too iconic in terms of music, voice actors, openings, and endings. I don't really give a fuck about. I just think being able to I don't want to say replace, but finding voice actors to put in place for characters that already have such iconic voice actors is going to be so hard to do. And obviously people are going to complain about literally everything. It's going to be so hard to replace the original charm of it. Exactly. I think like literally exactly. I think like with the music, it's going to be hard to replace. I don't want to say replace, redo. I guess redo is what I kind of want to say. It's going to be so hard to redo that original music, those original voice actors, you know. I have faith in the remake. Actually, while we're here, let me look up what the fuck they're doing with the remake. Like, I don't think there's been literally any news on it. Production has been going on since 2023 with updates from the character designer in June 2025 confirming the project's active development, with the release date remains unknown. There hasn't been an official release date confirmed for the series. It won't be for a while. Yeah, it's probably not going to be till maybe next year. Because if they're doing seasonal, they're probably done with... Also, I wonder if they're going to start with the manga, or they're going to start with how the anime started. Because the original One Piece anime started different than the manga. The original One Piece anime started with Nami on the boat, but the manga started with Luffy as a kid. So I wonder, I'm assuming they're going to go with the manga. I would assume so. Yeah, no, I don't think, I think they'll cook. I don't think they're going to sell. I think they're going to do really good. I just think it's going to be so hard. I just think it's going to be so hard to recapture that like original early One Piece feeling, especially with different voice actors. I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm tweaking about too much on the voice actors, but I just feel like it's so hard to redo those, man. I don't know. I just feel like it's going to be so difficult. Anyway, though, One Piece reaction, because I was hungry and I didn't know what to do. So I was like, you know what, let's just do this. Why not? So, y'all want more One Piece reactions? You know what to do. I'll see y'all later.